lot of it has to do with the, by the time you're there, a lot of it has to do with, elimination. People would be eliminated from training at will because...
You mean like voted off the island, as it were?
In a sense, like people would just one day there'd be like 31 people, and then at the end of the day, somebody would be talked to, and the next day there'd be 29.
Well, why would they be eliminated?
Well, because they didn't fit. I mean...
but how would they determine if you didn't fit or not?
Well, I mean, I'll never really know, but it seems clear to me anyway, from having been there now, that like one of the major ways of determining it is, people with whom the training is taking, would be eliminated.
But how do they? But how would you say that they determined that it wasn't taking?
I don't know. People who ask too many questions. People who ask really difficult questions about, why isn't this working, or why isn't that working, or, do you really think we're going to become profitable? Those people would be eliminated. And so it's actually not that hard,
It sounds like almost like a focus group environment in which, there are people listening.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think people were listening to these sessions, and they would tell the women to dismiss certain people at the end of the day?
Gosh, I really don't know. It doesn't seem likely to me.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know.
Did they have like these industrial psych sort of mind fuck things too? Like team building activities?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we did those.
Well, and also, were you tossed in, I mean, was it all, like, if you were starting for customer service and I were starting for business development, would I be more or less in the same pool with you?
No, not at all. Completely segregated. You would be trained up on the mansion on the hill, and you'd be kept far away from these people.
And do you have any idea what their training was like? Was this...
From what I understand, it was very similar, although, sort of more high-end. I've talked to some people. I actually know some people who did training at Amazon for up on the hill, and it's very similar. They tell the same stories. Like they have to tell the story of, Jeff Bezos traveling across the country. Very similar things, actually. But I never really figured out that I was in a strange environment because I really liked it. I ended up liking where I was working and enjoying it and thinking everything was normal.
What was your day-to-day like?
In customer service?
Yeah.
Well, the day-to-day was a lot of, it was just answering email and answering the phone.
And how much email and phone call, and how many emails or phone calls would you get a day?
Oh, God. Wish I could remember the statistics, but I know that I'd answer, I generally was able to answer about 45 to 50 emails an hour. And
did you have all these? You had all these canned responses.
Absolutely.
That you.
And then what you do is you mix the canned response with, a slight amount of personalization, and attempt to make it look as, personable as possible.
Right.
But that was about.
But you see,
I was probably I think I was averaging around 45 to 50 responses an hour, whether it was phone call or email.
How much were they paying you for this?
Oh, very little. In customer service, I believe I started at $10 an hour.
Holy good night.
Yeah, I know. It's not really enough considering the amount of,
and what about this? Were you able to at least log overtime?
Oh, yes. You were able to log overtime. In fact, overtime was mandatory because you had to, generally we had to work about 50 hours a week because we were always, overloaded. So you were actually expected to do overtime. You kind of had to. And I say kind of had to because that was sort of the point. Like, you can't actually legally tell people they have to do overtime, but at the same time, people had to do overtime. So it left this interesting situation where they were like, they couldn't say mandatory overtime, but it meant mandatory overtime, and everyone knew it.
Now, you said you were working at this grungy building in downtown Seattle. What was your particular work environment like?
Well, I sat at a really small, it wasn't even a desk. Well, it was a door that had legs on it, so that it became, it was a door that had legs on it, so it became a desk.
Was it literally a door?
Yes, they're literally doors. So I had that, and I would, I wasn't in a cube or anything. I was in I was at that with a little divider wall, a half divider wall next to the edge of the door, and just a monitor, and a monitor was always on top of a couple of phone books. They gave you some phone books you could put under it to make your monitor higher. This is part of that same, startup mentality, like, we can't afford things that raise the monitor. We need, things cheap. That's how we're saving money. I know people now, quite a few, that are wrestling with, permanent disabilities now. Some of whom are suing Amazon.
Now, were you part of a particular group, or was it just kind of like this?
Well, it's interesting because everyone's the same, right? Everyone's doing the same fucking job. We're all just answering email, answering phone calls. But that doesn't work very well for motivating people. So you were part of a general area, and within your area you were part of a quad. So you were assigned to a quad that had a quad leader, and the quad leader had 2 lieutenants, and you were organized sort of like this little platoon of like 12 people or so. And you would have quad activities and quad meetings where you would talk about your quad numbers. But it was all pretty contrived. Like, different quads didn't actually do anything different than any other quad.
How many quads were there?
Well, that's kind of impossible to say because it just grew so quickly. I mean, when I started, I was employee, I was like, I don't know, there were about 300 employees, a little more. And when I left, there were about 7,000, so it's kind of hard to say.
Huh. Oh, which quad were you in?
I was in the quad called Route 66.
What the hell is that?
Well, we get to pick our own names in our quads. There was a quad called Xanadu. There's a quad called, Hazard County.
What the fuck? Oh. But say you were in Hazard County or Xanadu, what the hell would you be covering? Or supporting, I should say.
You were just you're answering email, answering phone calls. Same thing everyone else is.
So it wasn't like, oh, I'm handling science fiction books or
no. There was
lawn furniture.
They did eventually make other areas there were people who would work on electronics and stuff. But within the electronics area, there would then be quads. Like, say you had 40 people working on electronics, they would then divide them up into 3 quads.
So like the service itself, it created the illusion of personalization.
Yep.
So rather than saying, okay, you're doing lawn furniture, you're doing electronics, whatever, they say, oh, well, you're, hey, whatever you want to call it.
Right. That's accurate.
Quad activities, what were they like? Was it like the typical sort of like, hey, we're having a pizza party?
Absolutely. That's exactly what they were. I mean, they do those things, back and forth, up and down.
And how often? Well, once a week? Or?
Oh, more like once every 2 weeks.
And would they keep soda and shit around in the office? And
well, that's the thing about Amazon is that they didn't, because at Amazon, sick as this sounds, at Amazon, you were expected to be we're in startup mode, so we can't afford that. So you get all the things you get at other .coms, but none of the payoff because we're in startup mode. So it's really kind of ridiculous because
even though the company's stock was at 300 or something.
That didn't matter because you also never talked about the stock. Our official position that they really believed in or really wanted people to believe was that we don't pay attention to the stock. We don't pay attention to it. So as a consequence, we could never do things based on the stock. Of course, it's just that's.
But what about people who'd be checking Yahoo quotes or something?
Everyone looked really guilty about it. They would do it, but not tell anyone. And when people people wanted to like discuss, the stock when they were, naturally everybody like, dude, it went up a huge amount today. People would discuss it in this,
hushed tone.
Even though it's your stock, it makes no sense.
Now, you said you enjoyed your job there. Why did you like it?
The job I actually didn't like very much. It was better in business development, of course, but the job is actually, it's pretty crap. But I really like being part of Amazon, and I think that that's a common experience. Like people, it's hard to say what's actually good about your job because it's not very good. But Amazon itself it's tremendously exhilarating to be part of that entity, to be part of this giant creature, and to feel, and of course the media helps a lot. Like everyone paying attention to it all the time. God, it's just really it's exhilarating, and so I know I was affected by it, and I think most of the people working there are affected by it too. You feel like you're making history.
Right.
They're really honest about that. We really felt like we were changing the world.